Did one weekend ruin the entire 2023 Red Sox season? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. We now have a new leading frontrunner for the worst series of 2023. This one's going to be almost impossible to beat because the Red Sox over this weekend were swept by the Toronto Blue Jays in pretty miserable fashion, right? They now moved to 57-54 on the season. They're just 3-7 in their last 10 games. And most importantly, they are now 5 games back of third place in this division and also 5 games out of a wild card spot. They went from 2 games to 5 games out of a wild card spot over the span of 3 days. Now, a lot of people are saying this is it, right? Stick a fork in them. They're done. This is the nail in the coffin for the Boston Red Sox. So what we are going to do in today's video is we're going to figure out if that's actually true. We're going to talk about this latest Red Sox series. We're going to talk about what went wrong. We're going to talk about why this 3-game series has people saying this is the end of the 2023 season. And we're going to talk about whether or not there's any glimmer of hope left for this 2023 Red Sox team. But before we get into that, do me a favor, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Honestly, I have no idea where to start when talking about what happened this weekend. I don't even know if I want to highlight anyone in this series because it felt like everyone on the Boston Red Sox fell directly on their face. But there are some things that I did want to highlight before we got into absolutely trashing this team. The first one is that there were a lot of home runs in this series for the Red Sox, right? Jarren Duran had a home run in the first game, and it's nice to see that his power stroke is continuing in another series. I would love to see him add more power to his game. I know that's a lot to ask considering he just stopped trying to be a power hitter and it's worked out really well, but I think it'd be fun to find a sort of balance between being this slappy hitter that ends up pushing singles into doubles and being a guy who's going to hit home runs and hit tanks. I think it'd be a pretty lethal combination, but either way, he had a home run in this series. Rafael Devers hit another absolutely bizarro world home run. This ball probably could have bounced into the catcher's mitt, and yet Rafi was able to turn it around and hit it over 100 miles an hour and hit it over 400 feet. He's just an absolute freak athlete, and I love that he's reminding us over and over again just how good at hitting he actually is, but this ball was absolutely pooed on. Tristan Casas also had a home run in this series. He also went pretty deep. It was a pretty nice shot here. And to be honest with you, this was the most positive part of this series for me. The fact that there was a lot of contribution, at least offensively, from the young core of the Boston Red Sox, right? You were getting these home runs from guys who are going to be sticking around for a very long time. And to me, that's probably the biggest positive takeaway, honestly, of the entire season, but in this series in particular. One more thing that I wanted to point out was Luis Urias made his Red Sox debut in this series, and he actually looks really good. He had a hit every single game here. He was pretty decent defensively, right? This could be a guy who could be a dude for the Red Sox going forward, not just this year, but over the next couple years as well. I would love to see him make a name for himself here in Boston and contribute to this team. I mean, he has been a 2-WAR player, both in 2021 and in 2022, so I think there could be a pretty decently high upside there with Urias, but that's kind of where the positives end, right? So you did get some positives in this series, but the biggest glaring things of the Red Sox offense in this series were mostly negative, and it starts with statistics, right? The Red Sox were just 3 for 18 with runners in scoring position, leading to just hitting 167 with runners in scoring position. They left a grand total of 18 men on base, and that to me was the biggest problem in this series. There were no big hits, right? This is a Red Sox offense that is continuously cyclical. There has always been ups, there's always been downs throughout the entirety of this 2023 season, so it's not absolutely shocking that this Red Sox offense didn't really show up to play, right? They tend to do this as a team. They go 3 weeks where they're absolutely fantastic and then a couple weeks where they're absolutely miserable. But what I hate about watching this Red Sox offense was this was the most important series of the year so far, right? It's probably going to go down as the most important series of the year, and you came in and laid an absolute egg. You didn't really fight, and when you did fight, it was in extremely short bursts, right? It was over the course of 2 or 3 outs. It wasn't over the course of 3 or 4 innings where you're fighting clawing to get your way back in this. No, you were going 1 inning where you'd score 2 or 3 runs. You'd be like, all right, maybe this is the momentum you need to get the ball rolling, get back into this game. It just never happened. It felt like over and over again, you had these opportunities that you just could not capitalize. And that's really has been the story of this Red Sox offense this season, right? You go from capitalizing on everything, having the best at-bats in baseball, having some of the hottest hitters in baseball, to not being able to capitalize on a single goddamn thing. and having some terrible at-bats with runners in scoring position, and it happens like that overnight, right? It's absolutely crazy. We talk about it all the time that this Red Sox team lives or dies by its offense, and it may have just been put to rest by its offense in this series. As for the pitching, well, it was unsurprisingly all over the place. In 2 out of 3 of these games, you did have an opener. In the first game, the only game of the series we didn't have an opener, James Paxton got the ball, and he allowed 4 runs over 5 innings, 3 of those coming from home runs, and he ended up striking out 4. Was it a terrible start? No, it wasn't terrible, right? You were able to keep the Red Sox in this game. The problem is, once you start the game off of essentially 2 home runs in a row, right? You got the first pitch of the game was a home run, and then you give another one up to Vladdy, and then you come into the dugout and you go back out and you give up another one in the second inning, right? That's a little bit of a morale deterror in the first couple of innings here. And that's exactly what happened with James Paxton. Now, James Paxton's had a couple of rocky starts in a row, and I'm a little curious to see if maybe he's dealing with something. Is it fatigue from throwing this amount of innings that he hasn't done in a couple of years, or is something else going on? That's something to keep an eye on as we move forward here throughout the rest of the 2023 season. In the second game of this series, you got John Schreiber, who was actually fairly decent as an opener. He only went 1 inning, and then Nick Pivetta came in and he struggled. He went 4 innings, allowing 3 earned on 6 hits and only striking out 2. Yeah, Pivetta was off in this series. He wasn't pitching as well as he normally does, but it's not going to help when your defense is all over the place, right? You were getting errors that weren't actually errors all over the field, and really, that's sort of been the story of the Boston Red Sox so far this year, and it's really the biggest reason why they're in the position they're in today. It feels like the Red Sox make these defensive mistakes and then give up a massively big inning, and all of a sudden their momentum absolutely stops to a dead halt, and they end up spiraling, and it kind of all feels like it's stemming from the terrible defense. Brendan Bernardino was the one to close this one out in the third game. He was the opener. He continues to be one of the better openers in all of baseball, to be honest with you. He's really great as an opener. Chris Murphy ended up getting the ball as sort of your bulk inning starter that's not a starter type guy, and he really had his worst outing so far at the major league level. He only made it through 2 1/3 innings, allowing 6 earned runs on 6 hits and striking out 3. Murphy was getting hit really hard, right? A lot of that was his fault, but at the same time too, like we talked about with Nick Pivetta, if the Red Sox just made one defensive play, this entire inning would be an entirely different possibility, and maybe this would be an entirely different game. If Jarren Duran makes that catch, we might be looking at an entirely different topic for this video, and that's just really how it goes with this Red Sox defense. We talked about it all the time, but the Red Sox defense is the worst in Major League Baseball, and again, it's one of, if not the biggest reason why they are in the position that they are in today, because of just the pure fact that it feels like every time they make a mistake defensively, it comes back to bite them in the ass, and really outslugged their bad defense the entire year. This is what happens when you don't outslug your defense. You end up getting crushed and embarrassed at home and essentially dropped out of the wild card race in just 3 games, right? That's what happens when you have bad defense and you can't get it together on offense. Now, as for the bullpen, it was pretty bad, right? Vera gave up, I think, like 7 earned runs total in this series. Blyer stinks, Jake stinks. The bullpen, outside of like 2 or 3 guys in this series, PU, right? This thing did not smell good. It was absolutely terrible all over the place. And do I blame them? Honestly, not really. What I do blame is the fact that over the last month and a half, you have had 3 starters in your rotation. You've done absolutely nothing to try and solve that, right? I get that Nick Pivetta has been a starter without actually being a starter or whatever, but you still have to use an opener to get to Nick Pivetta. You are still giving up an entire spot in the bullpen to get to Nick Pivetta, and you didn't do anything in the deadline to supplement it. So yeah, it makes total sense that at some point, this bullpen's going to get to a grinding halt, right? They're going to be ground into absolutely nothing, and it felt like in this series, that's exactly what we saw. They're blessed with some off days over the last month. They aren't going to get off days this month. The fact that they are already falling apart in the first stretch of a 13 game in a row stretch is not exactly great news, and it's what happens when you don't do anything in the deadline and don't get the starting pitching like everyone said you should get. Bloom haters, Bloom lovers, people on the team, people not on the team were saying, hey, Red Sox, get some starting pitching. And they just flat out didn't, and this is what happens when you stand pat at the deadline. I also saw a lot of Cora blaming in this series, and I think that a lot of that has to do with Red Sox fans just trying to find someone to blame outside of the players themselves. For some reason, Red Sox fans love to give the players on the field a pass for everything that they have put on themselves. But if you want to talk about Alex Cora and you want to talk about managing decisions until you're blue in the face, right? You want to talk about pinch hitting players before it's too early or pinch hitting the wrong player. I don't care if you have Barry Lamar Bonds coming off the bench, or I don't care if you pinch hit Barry Lamar Bonds for Sandy Leon, right? It doesn't matter who's at the plate, because if you are hitting just 167 with runners in scoring position as a team, you're still not winning ball games. It doesn't matter who Alex Cora puts out there. If you on the field are hitting just 167 with runners in scoring position, you are not winning games. And I don't care what you think of Alex Cora's bullpen management, because regardless of whether or not you think it's the right decision, it doesn't matter if he's putting in prime Mariano Rivera to try and win these games. If the Red Sox defense continues to do what the Red Sox defense has done all year, you're still not going to win ball games, right? Those are things that are kind of outside of Alex Cora's control. And at some point here, you got to start blaming the players on the field themselves for the poor play and the poor decision making that we saw in this entire series. And that's exactly who I'm putting most of the blame on. But that's not to say that Alex Cora didn't have some bad moments in the series, because he definitely did. And I think one of the glaring moments in this series was from the front office, right? We already talked about it. You're probably looking at being 3 games back at the bare minimum of a wild card spot if you just had a starter. If you just had a starting pitcher, if you had a Rich Hill, if you had a Michael Lorenzen in this rotation right now to try and fill the void until Houck, Sale, and Whitlock get back, then yeah, you're probably looking at being 3 games back. Instead, you decide to do absolutely nothing, and you end up 5 games out of a wild card spot. Now, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you that I'm not giving up on this Red Sox team. And the reason I say that is because I don't give up on this Red Sox team until they're mathematically eliminated. That's just who I am, right? It would not shock me if, looking back at the end of this year, this series in particular was sort of the biggest nail in the Red Sox coffin, right? And it could be because of on-field play and how embarrassed they got. It could be because of off-field play and everything that happened with Doogie and Alex Cora saying this is his darkest moment as a manager, right? It could have a lot of different things to do with this series, but I could very easily seeing this series at the end of the year, looking back on it, saying, yeah, this is really when the Red Sox true 2023 season got ruined, and it ended in this series. So I totally get the mindset of, yeah, this was the end of the 2023 season. Put a fork in them. They're done. They're cooked. They're finished, right? This was the end of the 2023 season for a lot of people, and I'm not blaming anyone for that. I totally get that. That's just not who I am. I can't say they're done until they're actually done. And if you're like me, yes, there is still a way back from what happened this weekend. It's going to be extremely difficult, because now you have to leapfrog a couple of different teams. Now you got to try and figure out a way to go on a really hot win streak and pray that someone else goes on a really bad cold streak, but it's not impossible, right? You're playing a lot of bad teams going forward. If you can figure it out and get on a hot streak before the end of the month, then maybe you can actually do something about losing this series. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if this ruined the 2023 Red Sox season, but that's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below, what did you think of this latest Red Sox series? Did you think that this ruined the 2023 Red Sox season? Let me know all your thoughts on the latest Red Sox series in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.